Welcome to the Remind Podcast, the podcast where we get inside the real estate entrepreneur's mind. My name is Harrison Smith. I'm the Director of Growth with the Mateja Group at Keller Realty here in Maine and expanding throughout New England. And I'm joined today by Danni Higgins. How you doing, Danny?
I'm great, Harrison. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here. I'm really excited to have this conversation.
Good. I'm looking forward to it too. So why don't we kick it off with you telling folks a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So, like Harrison said, I'm Danny. And let's see, I am currently the client and partner ambassador with the Mateja Group, and I live in Portland, Maine, and I'm originally from the Southern Maine area.
Nice. So you're in the real estate space, but as we found out, most people don't start in the real estate space. They end up there. So why don't you
It's
tell
true.
us a little bit about your background and how you got into real estate?
Oh man, I kind of fell into real estate, actually, if I'm honest. I went to school at the University of Maine and I pursued a career in the medicine field. So I have my graduate degree in speech pathology. I ended up living in Maine and then moving to Texas, where did that graduate work. And when I was in Texas, my wonderful husband has always been interested in real estate, and so he read all sorts of real estate type books, and I told him no, 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 no for a long time, not having it, not interested. And so it's a great story where he said, "All right, I've got one book. If you read this one book, I won't ask you about real estate again." And I was like, "My odds are looking good. I can read a book."
Yeah.
So that book was Set for Life by Scott Trench.
Oh, good one.
It's a great book, but, he was like, "Yeah, you have to read it." And it's like, "Alright." So I get halfway through the book, and he was working at a paper mill at the time, and so, like, I never talked to him during the day. I called him in the middle of the day, and I said, "Alright, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. Let's
Mm.
do this." So, ever since then, after we moved back from Texas back to Maine, um, we bought, our first home was a multi-unit, and we haven't looked back.
Nice. So Step for Life was the first book. A lot of
Yeah.
people Rich Dad Poor Dad's the first book. Have you read Rich Dad Poor Dad?
I've read it twice, yes, but that was like, if I'm honest, that was book like 20. Like I kinda had to work my way up to Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yeah. Well, you have plenty of good books to choose from for sure in that space, but Set for Life is also a very good one. So good starting point.
Absolutely, absolutely. I feel like, Scott did a really great job, and it was so relatable. It was kinda conversational, in the book's presentation, so it just spoke to me, and I was like, "Okay, I'm in. I can do this."
Nice. So you started with a multi,
Yep.
and did you say that you lived in it?
Yeah, so our first we house hacked. The first home we bought was, so after Texas, we rented here for a year just to kinda get a lay of the land. And then, we knew we wanted a multi for our first one, so we found a 3 unit in Portland, and we lived in one of them and rented the other 2 out, but we actually started by Airbnb one of them, which kinda started us down a whole 'nother rabbit hole.
Mhm.
And, so yeah.
So you started with one Airbnb unit and obviously that's grown to more. Did you do Airbnb just, to kind of experiment? Did you have kind of like a funky unit that it made sense for, or was it just a model that you liked?
That's a great question. So a friend of ours in the area, so this was like 2016, 2017. So Airbnb really hadn't taken hold yet. Some people had heard of it, some hadn't. But a friend of ours in the real estate space had, um, I think he had one or two. And so Sean had been kind of talking about it, and we figured, all right, we'll go with one. So we did traditional long term rental on the first floor, and the third floor actually was a third floor of a triple decker. So it, had funky ceilings, archways.
Mhm.
We thought, all right, it's a little more eclectic. Maybe folks will like it. And come to find out, they really did. We booked out, and then ended up doing the same for the first floor after the long-term tenants, the lease went up.
Okay, so you started with one, it became two. How many Airbnb units do you have today?
I think we're at 6.
Six.
So,
Okay.
I think we're at 6, yeah. Well, or soon to be 6, I should say. So, we have 5 right now, but we are, pending a 6th. So, we're working on that right now.
Okay. So when you say Airbnb, kind of describe a little bit about what is an Airbnb unit to you?
An Airbnb unit for us, at least in our portfolio, what we have is, we have 2, multifamilies, and they're both 3 unit, triple decker stacked. And so one of them is in the town or the city of Portland, which there are regulations so that you have to have one long term and within a 3-unit building, and the other 2 can be Airbnbs. So we have those.
Okay.
And then in Westbrook, which is where our other building is, they actually don't have those regulations. So each apartment building with, in the next 2 months will be its own Airbnb. So for us, traditionally Airbnbs are thought to be more of single family units, whereas we've taken the multifamily approach where uh, an apartment is actually an Airbnb.
Gotcha. So you're buying these buildings, you're, kind of sprucing them up. Are you, fully furnishing them, plates, napkins, silverware, furniture, like all of it? And then are these typically 1, 2, 3 night stays? Like, how do you guys set it up?
Sure. The setup process, I try to tell anybody who's thinking about doing an Airbnb, you front load the work. You are going to be working, and it is going to take a lot of time, organization, and energy to get that unit off the ground, but it's so worth it once you do.
Hmm.
So, in terms of furnishing, to answer your first question, yes, we furnish the entire place. Um, so you don't want to come with me to IKEA? I bring a U-Haul.
Yeah.
Like I don't mess around. I have I have so many spreadsheets, what is needed, how many of what is needed, um, and then, just organizing the extra things that guests might need, trying to get into their mind of like what would be most convenient for them. So yes, it's a lot of prep work. So length of stay, um, the way we've structured that is there's actually programs that can help you build algorithms as to how much for pricing, but as well as giving you minimum night stay. So for us, if somebody books on a Saturday, they have to book Friday too. So there's a
Okay.
2-night, but instead of saying 2-night stay, they could book one night in the middle of the week, but they have to book the weekend together. And so that's consistent for our apartment buildings. We are actually Airbnb our primary residence this summer, just because 'cause we're adventurous like that.
Hmm.
So for that one, we have a minimum of 3 night stay.
Gotcha. So really what you guys are doing for Airbnb is almost a hotel model where you can stay for a night certain times, but if you're going to stay over the weekend, you've got to take the whole weekend. But really it's a hospitality model.
Correct, yeah, it's what the guest needs. We have minimum requirements, but we haven't blocked out that people have to stay for a whole week. Um, we have I there are programs that can help you manage it, though. So an example being 6 months out, folks can book for 7 nights. Only 7 nights, no less. But once it gets to 4 months, they can book 3 nights. And then once it gets even closer to
See.
the actual date, so the idea is that you're trying to fill a larger chunk of time, and then as it gets closer, if there's one-offs here, you can have those last minute bookings. So we've set it up so that we try to maximize what we can, and that is increase the nightly rate, decrease the turnover amount, so increase occupancy stays. But doing that in a accommodating basis, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. So the further out you are, the longer they have to book because obviously you're giving up the chance to book those nights differently. So they've got to secure more time.
Right.
And then as you get closer to the actual date, your rules loosen up just so you can fill up.
You got it.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. So where you're in Portland and Westbrook, which are not lakefront communities or, oceanfront communities, what's the profile, the typical person you're coming across who's staying at one of your Airbnbs?
And that's the amazing part. It's anybody. So I've had grandmothers coming to stay because they're expecting their first grandchild. I've had folks coming for conferences. I've
Hmm.
had, yeah, big conferences are a lot. Weddings are huge. The Maine half marathon happens right around here. A lot of people come to stay for that because we're within running distance. Um, being in an urban setting, I feel like potential hosts kind of overlook the appeal of just needing to be in a place where an event is happening.
Yeah, people come in for the events, the arts, the culture, family, whatever. It's a different segment than the people that are looking for a week on the beach. That makes a lot of sense.
Exactly, exactly. All of us have a conference or a something or other we have to pop into a city for. S- Some people prefer the Airbnb. They want to have a kitchen. They want to have their own space and their own key and not have to walk past all sorts of people in the lobby, but actually feel like they're a part of the town.
So do you have limitations on how long you will let somebody book for?
No, not really. We've had folks stay. I'm thinking about it. The pandemic made things a little interesting. So we had some folks stay longer during that time just because in the early part of the quarantine, they had to quarantine in a spot. So they'd come stay with us before they went home. So that led to some longer stays. Um, but now now actually the housing market has contributed to longer stays. So I have one guest currently who's staying with us because her and her family are looking to buy, but they can't find anything. So she's been staying with us through the winter, um, kind of more of a long-term tenant, but at that higher price because of what's offered with the furnished apartment.
Makes a lot of sense. So along the lines of, Airbnb and you mentioned front loading the work, but also maintaining as you go. I hear a lot of people talk about they love Airbnb, but it's a lot of work. It's a job. Being a host is a lot of work. What are your thoughts on being a host? What does a good Airbnb host look like, and what does that take?
Ooh, that's like a multi-level question there. Um, what's interesting about being a host is that everyone brings their personality to the role. So, I myself am a pretty organized person and I love systems. I don't want to have to repeat work. So for us, what we found to be helpful is using there's all sorts of websites that have popped up to help hosts be most efficient. So you know, I look at a host who's using a pricing platform. I look for a host who's using if they decide to use Airbnb and VBRO, are they using a third party site to help manage those bookings so there's no overlap? Um, are they using automated messages? Are they continuing to educate themselves? Um, I think those are key pieces for a host to be successful in that it can still be a passion project, but it doesn't have to be exhausting or, another full-time job. You can manage it a little more if you create those systems.
So with those systems, it sounds like you're not necessarily handling each individual booking. You're not sending every individual message. You're not answering every little question they might have. How does that look? How do you set that up in a way where it doesn't seem robotic?
Sure. Um, I think the way I set it up is that, there's time pieces of when I send my automatic messages or my automated messages. So, when somebody books immediately, I'm not the one who's like typing a message to them. I have a message that goes out that says, "Hey, thanks so much for booking. Just so you know, this is an automated message, but if you have questions, I'll get back to it as soon as I'm able." So that way it's not like trying to deceive the person,
Hmm.
but they're like, "Oh, okay, we get it. You're busy." Like you're setting up a bit of a time block for yourself. Um, and then I think the other piece is managing expectations. So I'll say, okay, I'm going to message you 3 days before you arrive. But instead, I message them 4 days ahead. So they're expecting me at 3, but I'm trying to over deliver. Um, so I think if you approach it in that way, that you're kind of one step ahead of them in a good way, it helps.
Yeah, that's really smart to just call out the fact that, hey, this is an automated message. I'm not trying to hide from it.
Right.
It is what it is. I'm just confirming your booking. But then also setting that expectation up front, knowing that you've got the systems in place to make sure that you will over deliver it. So you set an expectation, automated expectation, and then you over deliver it in an automated way. So along the way, they feel like you're taking really good care of them. Although Danny isn't necessarily sitting there at the keyboard going, "Okay, is it the right day? Do I send this message now?" Like it just goes.
Exactly, exactly, and on the back end too, I'm sure you've stayed in an Airbnb too. The night before you leave, you're trying to pack all your stuff,
Oh
and
yeah.
you're also like, "Oh, what do I have to do for this place?" I have a message that goes out the night before that says, "Hey, just a reminder, like if you can wash your dishes, don't worry about the trash or the linens. You are on vacation after all. Like, thanks so much, appreciate you." So again, it's just trying to be one step ahead of them, so they don't have to ask, but I've already thought about it.
Yeah, that's beautiful where there's still the human component, although it's being delivered in an automated way. Like your messages sound like a human being. It sounds like Danny might actually be sitting there sending them, although you're not. They don't get the sense that this is just some sort of canned message that every single person gets and not,
Right.
not special. There's still that human touch to it.
Exactly, and don't worry, I put smiley faces in there, it's I've written them for sure.
Yeah. So all these messages that go out are actually written in your voice. They're not just some sort of canned form message that you've just pasted.
Exactly. So kind of back to my earlier point, continuing education. I know I'm not the best. There's other people who have been doing this. So I've read books, I've listened to podcasts on and just taken tips that other people have done and expanded upon them. So I found a kind of a list of, here are the touch points you should have. And then I made it my own.
I really like that, the fact that
Right.
it is very much personalized. In the real estate space, we always talk about R&D, ripping off and duplicating.
Right.
We rip off and duplicate stuff all the time because we share things with each other. But in this case, you're able to kind of R&D some stuff, put it in your voice, make some improvements based on what you've learned, but you didn't have to start from square one.
Exactly. It makes the process a lot easier. It's less daunting. When you start at zero, seems like a huge mountain to climb, but if you can build on others who have already taken the path, it makes the process a lot easier and feels more manageable.
Yeah, exactly. And you still get that human element all along where you can effectively replicate yourself without having to be the one actually checking the calendar and sending the messages all on the right day.
Exactly.
So, assuming that we weren't to have some crazy regulation or change in the world, now that you've done Airbnb, do you ever see yourself going back to long-term rentals?
No,
Yeah,
I don't see it. Unless I don't know, unless Sean and I do some work out of state or, somebody else manages that piece. What drew me to Airbnb was not so much, I mean, there's definitely a financial component that
sure.
definitely outweighs a long-term rental. But I love the hospitality bit. I love hearing that somebody had a fantastic stay and they love the city. I feel privileged to be able to show them such an amazing place and for them to stay with me. I appreciate that. So I don't think I could give it up.
Well, that's great that it actually has meaning to you. You're not going through the motions because the returns are better, which many people do. You actually enjoy the process.
That's kinda how Sean got me on board, to be honest. So he's more of the financial brain, and then I'm the one who brings the systems, the organization and management. And so, I've always really loved people. And so the idea I got to talk with people and hear why they're coming and what they're coming for. And oh my gosh, I love this painting. And because I'm part of choosing that process, I'm like, oh, thank you. Like, yay. It's a chance to connect with them. So I do really enjoy it.
Yeah, it has that personal touch, which is great. So I have to ask before we move on to the Mateja Group and
Uh-oh.
what you do there. Your Airbnb is very much a business. This is
Mhm.
not just like I own a property, people pay me rent every month, and then I occasionally have to fix stuff. Airbnb is very much a business. It's fluid, things are happening every day.
Yes.
And you're doing this alongside your husband, Sean.
Yes.
We'll have Sean on a future episode to defend himself. But
Yes.
what is it like working, daily on this business alongside your husband? What kind of challenges does that present?
Oh, that's a good question. What's so funny, and I have this like distinct memory when we were living in Texas. So this is before we bought any investment properties. This was like before I was on the bandwagon. Both of us agreed. We both have very strong personalities. We were like, nope, we can't work together. Like, I love you, but no, we can't work together. And yet here we are owning this business together. And we were like, wait a minute, what happened?
Yeah,
But what's nice in it is that both of us know our strengths and we know our areas for opportunity. And so keeping that in mind that this is an opportunity area for me. So personally, finances, I have a harder time with the numbers. He has to walk me through those numbers and I'll get there, but it just takes me more time. Whereas for him, it's automatic. So knowing that that's an area for him to really shine and take over, and also me knowing, okay, this is not my strength. I've got to trust him in this, kind of lane.
mm,
And then the same goes on the other side for design, for maintenance, for that hospitality component of if somebody has a complaint or, how to reimburse somebody if something goes wrong, because things go wrong.
sure.
Um, reminding him as well, like, okay, hey, this is my strength over here. Like, trust me, we got to roll with it this way. And it's been really good once we've established which lanes those are. In the beginning, we were both just trying to do everything, and that was an exciting couple of months.
Yeah, so you guys jump into this business, you're tripping all over each other, probably creating some
100%.
frustration and then you start to clearly define the roles you each play within it. But I'm sure from time to time lines get blurred and you start zigzagging into each other's lanes. Do you have a way to kind of throw a flag and say time out, we got to fix this? Or does it take a little while to get there?
Um, Yeah, we do. I'm laughing because so recently, as I mentioned, Westbrook's a newer project. And for the first time, at least thus far, we had done one unit at a time. And so
Mhm.
very doable. This time we did two. And just navigating like, okay, how many pots and pans are needed on the first floor versus the third floor? And like this goes up there and that bed needs to go down there. It was an adventure. Um, and so usually we keep it in a teasing type of way. So he'll like have an opinion on design and I'll be like, "Are you trying to design this room?"
Hmm.
And then he goes, "Oh God, no." Okay, just checking. Like, and then it's just kind of that check and balance. Or he'll I remember when we were looking for properties before we found Westbrook, I am the one who is consistently looking and just kind of like, I'm a little obsessive, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I'm like, when I'm looking for a property, I'm in. And so I'd be like, "Oh, look at this property. I think the numbers will work." And I'm like looking at the actual posting.
Mhm.
And he's like, "So you've run the numbers?" And I'm like, "Oh, okay, maybe I haven't run the numbers."
Yeah.
Like, I'll just back up now.
I just think they'll work.
I just think they'll work. Exactly. So being able to kind of tease each other, be like, "Are you in my lane?" "Oh, yes, I am. I'm just gonna
Yeah.
back on up."
That yeah, that's good. There's gotta be some mechanism to make sure that you guys don't, crash into each other in the middle of all this, because with all that stuff going on, all the logistics, all the stress already, the last thing you need is to be battling with each other over it.
Exactly. And there are definitely times where we do have to come together where, the two pieces of what we're doing collide. And usually those conversations go well because we both know what the other is bringing to the table. So it I think defining those lanes really is what made all the difference. Before it was just utter chaos. But now we've got a system.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's transition over real quick to talk about the work you do at the Mateja Group. So you joined the Mateja Group as the client partner ambassador. So why
Yep.
don't you explain a little bit about what that role is, what it does, and also what attracted you to it?
Sure. Well, as I said, I have a history in working in the medical field. And while I did enjoy it, starting working with this business, Airbnb, just real estate in general, it kept pulling at me. I was very interested, but I didn't know where I would be a good fit. And so actually, it was conversations you and I had had about what opportunities real estate had. Being outside of the real estate world was like, you could be an agent, period. And I did. I thought there was a hard stop. And so after our conversations of like, hold on, actually, there's a lot more
Mm,
that you can do. So then in the fall, I started part time, and my role being the client and business ambassador. So or client and partner ambassador. What I do is I cultivate relationships with our clients, with our business partners, and with our community to be involved at a client level as well as on a community level. So I help us connect with other small businesses. I help us connect with nonprofit organizations as well. Just because, at the Matei Group, we realize that it's not just us. We're not like on a sole little island. We
mm.
we work within a bigger picture, and so my job is to connect us to that bigger picture.
Yeah, in real estate, back to your original point about most people think that you can be an agent and that's the end of it. We talk all the time about real estate's kind of a double-edged sword. There's so many opportunities, but there's so many opportunities. You can chase 1,000 things, but you'll never get them all. But the nice thing is there's at least 1,000 options to pick from. And then with your role connecting to the community, I think what people forget about real estate and how deeply entrenched in the community it is. I mean, these are people buying homes that are in school districts that are going to be going to local businesses that are going to become members of the community. Really, the agent and the real estate team in this case should be stewards of those relationships, but also in those communities interacting with the people that really our work directly impacts.
Absolutely. And trying to support them in what, their ventures might be, and if the community comes together, excuse me, for an event, we want to be part of that event. One thing I'm really proud of that we've started this year is Mateja Gives. And so an agent or team member has each month will select an organization, and $100 from any sale or purchase of a home within that month is donated to that nonprofit organization. We've highlighted some great folks. Hospice of Southern Maine, which actually they're right down the street from us.
Mhm.
We actually are just wrapping up with working with the Dempsey Center, and then being April, Camp No Limits, we've just started, and it's just been a wonderful opportunity to connect with our team for, what drives them outside of the real estate world, as well as, working with these great nonprofits and seeing how giving back to them, but also seeing what we can also do in the future to better benefit their needs.
Yeah, I love that you bring up the Mateja Gives because I think people watch HGTV and get the opinion that real estate agents make a ton of money and drive nice cars and wear beautiful watches and are selfish and money motivated. And what you find out when you meet most real estate agents is that's absolutely not the case. We are all focused on the role we play in the community, the impact we can have on the community, and trying to find a way to take what we do and make it a positive to everybody around us. And I think this has been a great outlet that you brought to light and letting us, better share the involvement we have with the community because that's an important piece of what we do.
Absolutely. And what's wonderful to your point, like what brought this forward was the agents saying, I want to do more. And so, it was a great opportunity to say, well, then let's do more. And
Yeah.
so it's really it just warms my heart. It's become such a huge passion project of mine. And I've really enjoyed it. So but yeah, I do that, and then I connect with, our clients as well, making sure they have all their needs met and, just kind of being a voice if their agent for some reason is busy at a moment, knowing that they can also talk they have somebody else, "Oh, yeah, I remember I talked to Danny," and I enjoy being that person.
Gotcha. So when you say they have all their needs met, not just buying and selling real estate, but
Yeah.
in theory, they can call the team for anything.
Yeah, and that's the best part when I love having that conversation of like, "Do you need anything?" And they're like, "No, I have my house." And I'm like, "All right, well, what about some renovation projects? Are you looking for an electrician? Are you looking for" and just kinda getting them thinking and connecting them to folks that we've worked with in the past, and helping them if they are remodeling their kitchen or if they're building a garage or whatever their goals are, we might be able to the goal is to serve as that connector in the community and connect them with something or someone who might be able to help them reach their goal.
Awesome. Yeah. These relationships are more than just how many houses can you buy or sell with us. It's really
Right.
how can we help you over the long term? How can we stay in touch? How can we continue to add value to your lives? Because really, that's what we value is relationships. We're in this for the long haul.
Absolutely. And it's been really nice having those conversations and clients do they come back and I'll get emails of like, "Oh yeah, who did you say that granite guy was or who's this?" And we're happy to share. And that's the best part. It's very much like open door policy like come on in like we'll share anything that we have with you just whatever, like you said, the relationship's in for the long haul.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. All right. Let's talk about you again for a little bit here. So you get into some long term investing, which becomes Airbnb investing. You join a
Mhm.
real estate team to go deeper in the real estate space. What was it about the real estate space, the industry as a whole, that attracted you to it?
I feel like real estate is very multifaceted. There are a lot of things that drew me to it. Um, I for me, I had that drive to be part of something that was growing.
Hmm.
That was a big draw for me for the industry. I felt like when I took that step into real estate, my opinions, my voice, my actions could be a part of growing something bigger. And I saw that I wanted that. I wanted to be a part of that. So it definitely it pulled. And so here I am.
So, what would you say has been most important to your success? Is there a particular habit or a trait or a mindset or a mentor,
Mhm.
something along the way that you can look at and say, that's been really key for?
I would say, it's an old thing for me and it's one word. When I went to this wonderful high school. And there was this course called humanities. It was really interesting because it was a professor of literature and then a professor of art history who taught these high school kids by choice. They didn't want to go teach at the college level, but they started at the beginning of time with art and literature, and we worked our way through. And it was a huge undertaking. It was a big, big course, but um, I remember I encountered in that course the word persevere. And I remember asking, I didn't know what it meant. And then when I heard the description and the definition that regardless of what comes in your path, you just keep going, it just resonated with me. And it's something that's been a core value of mine that regardless, it doesn't matter what comes up your path, whether it's a huge mountain, whether it's an ocean, it doesn't matter. You can keep going if you decide to. So that's been what keeps me going.
I love that because it's human nature when you start to feel a little friction or a little bit of pushing that you tend to stop. And
Mm.
it's kind of ingrained in your head. It's the fight or flight. It's the that feeling of discomfort that immediately like your mind and brain want to shut down. Like, I don't want any more of this. But
Right.
what we often find is the best things are on the other side of that discomfort or difficult situation. We just have to be okay with that period of discomfort to get to where it is.
Exactly. So instead of that fight or flight, my reaction is like I just drive my heels in a little further and keep pushing forward.
Nice. Very nice. All right. So in all this, and especially where you've done a lot of transitioning here over the last several years, what would you say has been that most difficult lesson you've learned along the way as it relates to your time in the real estate space?
Oh, this one I know immediately. This one I know. This has been very challenging for me. I am a person who likes to get everything done. So my systems that I was talking about earlier, like that allowed me to check that off of my, responsibilities. I could move on and accomplish something else. What I found is that I can't get there's to your point, like there's so much that you can do. There's so many opportunities, but there are so many opportunities.
Uh-huh.
And not being able to get to everything. I find that I run out of time and it's hard for me. It's hard. I struggle.
Yeah, it is, and it's funny because when you get into real estate, you get into business building and especially client services where the relationship really doesn't end. There's not an end point where you stop and go, okay, good, like I'm done with that. Like
Right.
it is just it's a continuum. It just continues to go. So you never get that point to really stop and celebrate, celebrate the win or enjoy the moment because there's another one coming. It's
Right.
it's continuous.
Right. Exactly. And it's uh it's definitely a mind shift to it forces me to prioritize a lot more, which is good.
Mm.
But yeah, it's tricky for me and it's something I have to keep coming back to. Like, oh man, I'm not gonna get everything done and be like, okay, that's okay. How do I pivot? How do I pivot to get done what needs to get done and prioritize and, you know, wake up tomorrow and tackle more?
Yep, exactly. Sometimes you have to just wait until tomorrow to get certain things finished.
That's true. Right, exactly. And working on making sure I'm getting the most important thing and working from that and not being overwhelmed by the opportunities that are there.
Yeah, and we talk about it a lot, focusing on the 20% of what you do that delivers 80% of the results, that old 80/20 Pareto principle. Yeah,
Yep,
it's making sure that if anything you don't get done, make sure it's not on that 20% list. If it's on the 80% list, no problem. It can pass on till tomorrow. But if the top 20% of the things you do that create all the results aren't getting done, that's when you start to feel that friction of not advancing.
absolutely. It's like spinning your wheels when you get stuck in the 80% and
Yeah,
it's frustrating.
absolutely. So what would you say would be that one piece of advice you wish you had known when you got started?
I wish I had known to rely on others more earlier.
Hmm.
So, it's kind of that saying, and I'm gonna butcher it. I always I am laughing because you always correct me on the verbiage, but it's the idea that you can only go so far on your own but if you work with others, you can go so much further. What is the
Yeah.
actual saying?
It is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Exactly. So
And it's
I
the same
try
thing.
same idea, but I every time I think I say it differently and it makes me laugh every time. The principle's the same. But I think that Sean and I tried to go far alone. And we hit a wall. We couldn't do any more. And so learning that lesson within the last year and a half of like, you need other people. And it's just made all of the difference.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I think we're all guilty of that at times, thinking that I got this, I can take care of this, I've got it all
Right.
figured out.
Right.
And in some cases, maybe we do, but what we find is that having people on the journey with you, not only is it more fun,
Yeah.
but
It's true.
it feels lighter. You're not trying to carry the whole load by yourself. You're not trying to do everything, be everything to everyone. Having the right people with you on that journey makes it just a better journey all around.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's, I guess, and you think, or at least I did, I thought about the idea that, you only bring people in when you can celebrate. And actually what I found was most helpful is having them support me when I was down or when something went wrong with the building or it didn't go right or I was beside myself because we were running late on the time. Like
Mhm.
it having them throughout all of it made all the difference.
Yeah, no, very, very true. It's having people you can lean on is key.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well, before we head out of here, what's a good way for people to get in touch with you if they want to talk about Airbnbs, talk about your journey through real estate, or get in touch with you about the Mateja Group?
Absolutely. Obviously I'm super shy. So
Yeah, for sure.
please contact me. I would love to chat. This is my favorite thing to talk about Airbnbs and real estate. I could talk about it all day. So you can email me. That's probably the easiest way. Danny, Danni at kwmatea.com. I'm always on my email. So I'll get right back to
Awesome.
you.
Awesome. All right. Well,
And it won't
thanks.
be an automated message in my
Yeah.
email.
Yeah. Right. These will be real responses from
These will be real responses.
all right. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Danny.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Harrison. Thank you so much.